So we are at the 2013 KOTESOL International Conference. This is Jeff Lebow speaking with
John Healy.
John Healy. What brings you to this conference, John?
Longtime resident of Seoul and been in Korea for about 10 years. So I'm a regular attendee at the annual conference and here for two reasons today, Jeff. One is to pitch people on the Anaheim MA TESOL program. I'm an Anaheim grad, and also to lurk around. I want to see some presentations, including and hopefully shake Dick Allwright's hand and to generally geek out with the content here.
Let's start with the geeking out. Why were you especially interested in Dick Allwright's presentation, and what are you most interested in learning about here?
Well, in fact, he's sort of a brand name that is well known to practitioners like us. But actually, one of my latest research interests is writing, and I noticed that there are a lot of presentations on writing, and I find that in my classrooms, students are really struggling not only with content issues, but basic formatting issues. So I'm always looking for ways to better approach writing in the classroom and looking for better learning outcomes in that productive skills. So really that's
what level do you teach
here? University students, basically beginners.
All right, what advice would you give? What have you learned so far that would help other teachers teach writing in Korea?
Well, great question. Well, one, I think it's all about the process. I don't want to sound cliche, but I think writing so often is treated as sort of an afterthought. And it's typically given out as sort of homework as students are walking out the door. So we say, hey, don't forget, write me a paragraph on air pollution. And in this task-based world we're living in, teachers are obsessed with having noisy classrooms because somehow that's how we gauge a successful communicative outcome. And I think what you got to do with writing is take a step back and enjoy a little bit of silence and remind your students that it's okay to hunker down and to work on process issues like thinking, planning, organizing. And once you sort of set that tone, I think you can start getting mechanical about basic stuff like margin to margin writing, double spacing, and just basic attention to detail, like give me something that looks like a paragraph. And issues like letter formation and so on. Disturbingly bad stuff is being generated at the university level. Shocking. So there's got to be a way to fix it, and I think one thing we can do as teachers is just to slow down and let our students engage with that very important task that is really their weakest skill, for sure.
Writing, when an instructor gets tasked with teaching a writing class, I think their first thought is, oh no, that's going to be so much time.
Yeah.
How do you deal with managing the requirements it takes for you to provide proper feedback or meaningful feedback to a writing?
It's a great question, and you're absolutely right, Jeff. The fear is I'm going to be spending my weekends with a stack of papers and put a bunch of red ink on it, give it back to students who are going to promptly ignore the feedback, and even if they attend to it, it's delayed, right? So here's the trick, I think, in my opinion. One, keep it highly structured and keep it short. There's no need for students to be writing pages and pages and pages of content, especially when it's going to be poorly done. So keep it short and spend that classroom time. Dedicate a little bit of time so that your students are writing in the class and that you're giving immediate corrective feedback, and target the feedback. So don't just start basically circling stuff. So today we're going to work on subject-verb agreement. And that's all. That's all we're going to do. Praise, praise, praise. And the other thing I like to do, Jeff, is peer editing. So, but again, keep it structured. So today I want you to add 3 adjectives to that 6-sentence paragraph. That's your job. You're just adding adjectives. And so let's go around and then jigsaw, keep them moving, keep it interesting, keep it short.
A couple of things I love doing. I use Google Docs for all my writing courses, and that way students can observe each other's writings and they can make comments. Which I find I like that meta writing about the writing.
Yes.
And I also found that I stopped making corrections. I highlight. When there's something wrong, I'll highlight it and let the student try to figure out what the problem is. Because I found myself spending so much time making corrections, and it seemed like it was really easy for them to forget that. And they were making the same mistake again and again.
Right.
Whereas if you force them to negotiate that process and figure out what's wrong with it, why is it wrong? And then the other thing that's been really successful for me is, rather than always going one-on-one for feedback, I look through the whole batch of assignments and pick out 20 sentences that are sort of typical of the errors that they make, and pass out the page of sentence corrections, make these sentences better, work with a partner. And I found that to be one way that they can kind of absorb what they need to absorb, as opposed to, oh yeah, that was wrong, and making the same mistakes.
Hey, you know, in the catalog of possible errors, what in your experience are some of the major ones?
You know, not major, common is articles.
Right.
Articles, and I feel like English should just get rid of articles.
Yeah.
I'm for simplified English.
Totally. Drop the third person S.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Plural nouns, I see. Do you code for
The highlights, or do I? Not always. Sometimes I endeavor to do so, but I find myself not doing it a lot.
Hey, you know what? In my context in university, we spend 75 minutes a week with these students, and it's a sort of so-called 4 skills class, right? So let's just
so your course isn't a writing course, it's a 4 skill.
Oh, no, this is like a basic called practical English, right?
Okay.
So it's like a textbook type of, task-based stuff. So let's get realistic here. What are we trying to do? Well, I think one of our major jobs is to not make students hate English. So just try to make learning, fun in general. And if you can get them sort of enthusiastic about even showing up to your class, I think you got a big win. Then, what are we really trying to do? We're not trying to generate, published authors here. These are people who are struggling with basic transactional English. I think what you got to do is really keep it simple, keep it friendly, target the feedback, and using technology like Google Docs is, I think, a great solution. The issue with me is, I think I like to go offline because students somehow, when they're online, get into this sort of weird behavior with reductive forms and a lot of the little sort of doodads that are part of online text. And while it's, I guess, theoretically easy to correct that, I think from what I've seen at a university level, if you can't, basically deal with letter formation and, casing.
When they're writing in class, are they handwriting?
Handwriting.
Wow.
Handwriting, yeah. And there are certainly benefits, to using Word, for example, which can offer help with spelling and even grammar, right? But it does add a layer of sophistication and complexity. And for my 75-minute-a-week type of treatment, that means, it's embarrassing to sort of say this, but we're spending maybe 20 minutes a week, right, on writing. So, as I said, I think the key is to try to offer an experience that is not intimidating, and to try to keep it fun and light, and hopefully, as they progress with their English language development, they'll have some type of foundational skills that they can, leverage in the next That's the next guy's problem.
All right. Well, that's a good final word on that topic. I wanted to give you a chance to pitch Anaheim. What should we know about Anaheim?
Hey, well, thanks. Well, it was a really great experience for me, and I don't want to sound like a shill. I'm not a paid guy here. I'm just an enthusiastic supporter. But, of course, in addition to eminent scholars like David Noonan and Rod Ellis and Kathy Bailey and Ken Beatty, that great Canadian guy focusing on computer-assisted learning, many others. There are also, the program provides access to these guys. There are no TAs, right? These are, in addition to being world-renowned scholars, really practitioners, expert, talented people with their feet on the ground in classrooms all over the world. And you get to interact with them on a weekly basis, and having, David Noonan sort of take you under his wing, or having a chat with Rod Ellis about SLA. It's just an incredible
How is the program
experience.
structured? Is it David Noonan teaches this course, or is it, and what kind of interface do you have? Is it live interaction, synchronous, or?
So it's one prof per course, and each has their own little fiefdom. So Kathy Bailey is doing classroom-based evaluation, Rod Ellis doing second language acquisition, etc. And there's some online interaction during the week, and then everyone gets together for a real-time video session. For me, it was every Saturday morning here in Korea, so it's Friday nights PST. And the video is hosted by the prof, and typically driven by a PowerPoint thing using GoToMeeting. And so it's real time, and we got a chat. And of course, it's a wrap-up and supplementary session.
What would you say to those who say, well, I'm thinking about getting a master's, but I don't know about online. I don't know if it's as meaningful or useful or as interesting as face-to-face?
Well, I'd be interested in your opinion on this, but I think it's losing its stigma, isn't it? The distance learning idea, and it's no longer a kind of a matchbook kind of used situation. And it's really a modern way to learn. And in fact, my wife teaches English. She's a Korean and teaches English using Skype. And it's an incredible platform because not only does it provide just the right amount of sort of distance for a learner in a one-on-one environment, which can be quite anxious, right, for a person. It gives you an opportunity to feed them corrections real time and then review that text chat, right, and save it and so on. So in the same way, going online, especially for a TESOL, it's the only way. And look, you're interacting with people from all over the world, right? So it's kind of cool that here we go with someone in Portugal, someone in Colombia, someone in Canada, someone in China, someone in Korea, all interacting real time and all sharing their experiences. And I doubt you could have that in a sort of brick and mortar type of environment.
I think one of the complaints about online learning has been the lack of social component to it.
Yeah.
And I think social networking is sort of, meeting that need, whether it's a Facebook group for that class or a Google community. And I think the other thing is a lot of the platforms don't really support the give and take, the class conversation.
Right.
And I think that's coming along. I think things like Google Plus Hangout, where you can have a video conference of up to 10 or 15 people at the same time, and that becomes a real conversation. You can interrupt each other as opposed to presenter, switch the mic kind of thing.
Right.
And I think there's added functionality that's not there in a face-to-face with the automatic archiving and the collaborative note-taking and stuff. So I'm a huge believer.
Sure, and of course, depends on your setup at home, but I used to have, I have a, sort of a big Mac, and would run the chat and the video here, but also keep a web browser open. So you really have these resources at your fingertips, and arguably a much better experience than sort of having your nose in the book at the back of a classroom.
And I think that's how language learners are going to spend most of their time learning language in the 21st century.
Absolutely.
So it makes sense for us to be trained that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, anything else you want to talk about?
Well, how serendipitous. I was just sort of walking by on this beautiful Saturday afternoon, and it was a real pleasure to to speak with you, and thank you for this. It's a great
Likewise, thank you very much for, or thank your battery for dying. I'm glad you stopped by, John.
It's my pleasure. Thank